Pain versus suffering. The Buddha's core distinction that stops agony. You've been meditating long enough to know where there are chronic pains in the body, where there tend to be pains as you sit in meditation, or you have pains that have nothing to do with meditation and have everything to do with your posture or your other activities in the course of the day. We've been taught to use the breath to help alleviate our suffering around the pain. We create positive, good, pleasant sensations in different parts of the body by the way we breathe. And then we see if those sensations can go through the pain, help disperse some of the pain, or at the very least, break up the patterns of tension or walls of tension that tend to build around the pain. And even when the pain doesn't go away, we're in a much better position to look at it, to understand it, particularly to understand why it is that the pain can lead to suffering in the mind. But the fact that we're using pleasure as our foundation is sometimes called into question. Ajahn Lee used to get attacked by other members of the forest tradition for teaching people to be stuck on pleasure. Just the other day, the question came up, how does his teachings fit with those that say simply to sit with pain until it finally goes away on its own and you learn the lesson of the impermanence of pain? We can't just sit with pain. The mind is always doing something actively one way or another with the pain. Even when we tell ourselves to just sit, that's a form of fabrication. As the Buddha said, there are 3 forms of fabrication in all. There's bodily fabrication, verbal, mental. Bodily is the way you breathe. Verbal is the way you talk to yourself. Mental is the combination of perceptions you hold in mind, images you hold in mind, or words you hold in mind, together with feelings. And as he says with the things that give rise to suffering in the mind, either you simply watch them till they go away on their own, or you exert a fabrication, because there are some that won't go away simply by your watching them. If you're going to sit for a long time with pain, you have to know how to talk to yourself around it. In fact, that's the whole purpose of sitting with it, to see what you're saying. Ajahn Chah once said that if you simply had to develop endurance around pain, or if endurance were enough to get us through, then chickens sitting on their eggs would have gotten there long before human beings, because they can sit for hours with no problem. You have to bring in discernment, and discernment is a matter of looking into fabrication. How are you fabricating your thoughts around the pain? What are you telling yourself about the pain? And it's perfectly legitimate to bring in the breath as well. Through the way you breathe, you can create feelings that enable you to sit with the pain for a longer period of time and feel less threatened by it. Of course, there will be things that will come up in life that you can't breathe through, or when you breathe through them, you can't make them go away. This applies to things outside as much as things inside, in fact, even more to things outside. When society is in turmoil, you can't simply breathe through the turmoil to make it go away. But you do have the ability to talk to yourself about it, to hold images in mind that enable you to be with something disturbing and not be disturbed by it. This is a skill you're particularly going to need as illness comes, as death comes. In the meantime, you use all the qualities of fabrication that you have at your disposal, all the opportunities that the process of fabrication in the present moment presents to you, to understand what is it you're doing that's creating the suffering. Because this relates to the Buddha's explanation in the Four Noble Truths. When he explains the noble truth of suffering, he starts out with things we ordinarily relate to suffering: aging, illness, and death, separation from the things we like, having to stay with things we don't like, not getting what we want. But then he points out the common denominator in all those things, What makes them suffering that weighs down the mind is clinging to the aggregates. The point being that if you could stop the clinging, then aging, illness, and death would not be suffering, or you wouldn't have to suffer from them. They would be painful, but the mind wouldn't have to suffer from them. It's somewhat ironic that you hear scholars nowadays saying that the Buddha didn't really talk about noble truths. The word noble in the truths has nothing to do with the truths themselves. It means truths that are true for noble ones. That's what they say. The thing is, though, that for arahants, aging, illness, and death are not suffering because they have no clinging. Aging, illness, and death are suffering for those of us who are not arahants, precisely because we still have clinging. In the Buddha's analysis of causality, his shortest explanation of his awakening comes down simply to: there's suffering in the present moment that comes from your present actions. There's suffering that comes from your past actions. And it's the present action suffering that's weighing the mind down, i.e. the fabrications that you're doing. So you want to become sensitive to your fabrications. What you're doing right now. Learn how to work with the breath. Work with your perceptions around the breath. Work with your perceptions around the elements of the body. Earth, water, wind, fire, space. That will give you some insight into exactly what you're bringing to the present moment, because you're bringing a lot more to the present moment than you're aware of, and you're not going to find that out until you start exploring. As with any experiment, you have to manipulate the factors to see what difference you can make so that you can understand what exactly is a factor that's operating right now. So work with the breath. Work with your ways of talking to yourself around the breath. Work with your perceptions of the breath, and then use the same factors, the same fabrications, to deal with pain. You'll find that you can endure a lot more than you could have otherwise. But it's not just a matter of endurance. You develop discernment into the big troublemaker. In the world right now, which is your own mind, the media keep telling us other people are the big troublemakers. They divert our attention from where the real work is, the way in which your mind is creating trouble for yourself right now. And it's not a selfish quest to try to focus on solving this problem, because the less suffering you create for yourself, the less you're going to be leaning on other people. That way, when the time comes when you are really sick and you are dying, and you can't just breathe through the illness or breathe through the death to make them go away, you'll still have other techniques, other skills around your understanding of what the mind is doing. Those skills will hold you in good stead, because the more sensitive you are to the process of fabrication, the more likely you are to find what's not fabricated. And that's your true refuge. As the Buddha said, you think about all the dangers that can happen. Aging can come, illness can come, death can come, a split in the Sangha can come, social turmoil can come, and you want to learn the skills so that even if these things happen, you can still be free from suffering. So we don't deny that there are problems in the world. We don't think we can simply breathe through them or wish our way through them. But there is something that we can attain that is safe from those problems, something that's not fabricated at all. So if you want to find that, get really skilled at fabricating your way around whatever issues come. So we don't deny that there are problems in the world. We don't think we can simply breathe through them or wish our way through them. But there is something that we can attain that is safe from those problems, something that's not fabricated at all. So if you want to find that, get really skilled at fabricating your way around whatever issues come. If it's pain in the body, learn how to talk to yourself about it. Learn how to breathe around it. Issues in the world outside. Look at your perceptions. Look at the way you talk to yourself. because the solution lies here. This is why it's so important that you get familiar with fabrications and get familiar with this process of causality, where some things are coming in from the past that you can't change, but other things are part of what you're doing right now. And there, you do have some range of choice. Learn how to make the most of that fact. Endurance. In the Ovada Patimokkha, which was the Buddha's summary of his teachings very early in his career, the very first topic is patient endurance. He says it's the best quality, the best practice for burning away your defilements. And yet, it's strange. There's not that much in the canon on the topic. There's one sutta that connects endurance very directly with goodwill. It's when people come to insult you or harm you, creating a lot of pain. And the Buddha says that you have to have goodwill for them, even in difficult circumstances like that. This also means you have to have goodwill for yourself, because that's the reason for wanting to have goodwill for other people. You want to make sure you don't do anything unskillful under the power of anger or impatience. The Buddha gives a few analogies. He says to make your goodwill large like the earth. People come and try to make the earth go away. They spit on it, and they urinate on it, and they dig here and they dig there. But they can't make it go away, because it's so much bigger than their efforts. Make your mind like the river Ganges. People can come with a torch and try to set fire to the river, but the river is water. You can't set fire to water. Make your mind like space. People try to draw pictures in space, but there's nothing to draw on. That's the kind of quality you want to develop in the mind. And you do that first by thinking about these images, thinking about these perceptions. But there's more. And it's important that we learn the more, because our culture is really good at making us impatient. Traditional cultures were the other way around. The first thing they wanted to teach children was to be patient and enduring, because they realized that the children, as they grew up, were going to suffer a lot if they couldn't develop some patience and endurance. But we let our children be raised by the mass media, and the mass media don't care about the children's well-being. All they want is what they can get out of you. By making you impatient, they get you to buy more. So we have to go against our acculturation and the basic tendency of human beings, who, if they're not trained, tend to be impatient anyhow. This means we have to train ourselves. The training is very similar to the training for dealing with physical pain. In other words, it follows the steps of the tetrad in breath meditation, dealing with feelings. Remember, the first step in the tetrad is to breathe in and out sensitive to rapture. The next step is to breathe in and out sensitive to pleasure. The third is to breathe in and out sensitive to mental fabrications, which are perceptions and feelings. And the fourth is to breathe in and out calming mental fabrications. Those first two steps deal with the principle that when you're faced with a difficult situation, you don't talk to yourself about how difficult it is. You find what opportunities for pleasure there are, what opportunities there are that provide strength inside. In other words, focus on what's good in the situation, what opportunities are open, and don't focus on areas where the opportunities are closed. This topic has come up several times now as the quarantine begins to extend. It's beginning to seem as if there's no end in sight, and people make themselves miserable thinking about how long it's going to last. Well, that perception of how long it's going to last is a big problem right there. So don't focus on it. Focus instead on where you can find pleasure in the meantime. Harmless pleasure. That may entail giving yourself pep talks or reminding yourself that you can make your mind large like the earth. You can make your goodwill large like the earth, cool like the river Ganges. as surfaceless as space. You do that through the meditation. This is one of the reasons why we practice concentration. There can be a sense of well-being, a sense of fullness, rapture, that you can gain as you train the mind to be still, totally independent of outside conditions, and you can learn to feed off that. Ajahn Fuang talks about how he was trapped up in northern Thailand during World War II. He was missing Ajahn Lee and was cut off from everybody he knew. So he would spend his days in concentration, feeding off the rapture as a way of sustaining himself in some very lonely and in some cases deprived situations. So, learn how to appreciate what you've got with the breath. Appreciate the opportunity to get the mind quiet. Give yourself something positive to focus on. Those are the first two steps. The second two have to do with mental fabrications, feelings and perceptions. This is the stage of the practice where you look into the perceptions you hold around things, like the perception that the quarantine is going to be endless. That's not a very calming perception, so you replace it with something else. When the Buddha is talking about physical pain, he has you remind yourself that the pain is something separate from the body. When you're dealing with unpleasant words, he has you remind yourself to think in ways that depersonalize them. For instance, if someone says something really bad, remind yourself, there's an unpleasant sound making contact at the ear. You don't pretend that it's not unpleasant, but it doesn't have to go any further than the ear. Have the perception that it stops right there. You could apply the same perception to all kinds of things that are unpleasant in your surroundings. Have them stop right at the sense door. Don't let them in. They can come knocking, but you don't have to respond, because otherwise we take them in and weave all kinds of narratives around them. Or as in the Buddha's image of the arrows, it's as if we've been shot with one arrow and we pull it out and we stab ourselves with it again and again and again. We think about, why did that person say that? Or, why did that person do that? Why do they disrespect me? Why do they treat me so badly? Those thoughts just eat away at you. If you can leave the sound at the contact, then you can tell yourself other stories, as when the Buddha has you remind yourself about unpleasant words. The nature of human speech is that sometimes it's true, sometimes it's false, sometimes it's well-meaning, sometimes ill-meaning. And so, the fact that people are lying to you or saying things with bad intentions is really nothing new or out of the ordinary. The same goes for pandemics. Think of all the many pandemics there have been throughout the world. This is a feature of human society, so don't take it personally. You've got a human body. It's subject to disease. When people live together, they spread diseases around. We're fortunate now that we know a lot more about how pandemics work than they did in the old days. In the past, things were a total mystery. In the time of the Black Plague, people noticed that the disease tended to be spread especially fast among people who went to public baths, so they came to the conclusion that bathing was bad for you. And so, for centuries after that, people in Europe wouldn't bathe. Imagine what that was like. At least we know something about the disease, and we can take some precautions. But the important point is to learn to see this as normal. Make allowances for what special measures have to be made, but otherwise, realize that the important things in life are the qualities you develop in your mind, the perfections. Even in a pandemic, whether you get sick or don't get sick, you can still develop those perfections. You can develop goodwill. You can develop endurance. You can develop determination. Here's an opportunity for improving your mind, so change your perceptions. Instead of getting yourself upset and worked up, Perceive things in a way that helps you to calm the mind and keep its focus on what really is important. Calming the mind doesn't mean you simply say, "Well, I'm just not going to do anything at all." You get the mind calm so that you can do the work that needs to be done with more focus, a greater sense of dedication, greater consistency, because that's the problem with a lack of endurance. You get inconsistent in your good efforts. The virtue of endurance is that your goodness doesn't have to depend on outside circumstances, and this relates directly to the principle of 4 noble truths. Suffering comes from the way you talk to yourself. Physical pain may be inherent in having a body, but the suffering that goes into the mind is not automatic. It comes from how you relate to the pain, and that's good news, because you can relate in new ways. It's the same with learning some endurance around the conditions of the pandemic. The human mind can make itself suffer over anything at all. During the retreat in Brazil, one of the questions that came in wasn't really a question. It was a statement. "The silence is driving me crazy." In response, I said, "It's not the fact that the silence is driving you crazy. It's the fact that your mind isn't silent. That's driving you crazy. The mind is talking to itself in all kinds of ways that just makes the situation worse." After all, here you have the opportunity to meditate, to look at your mind, to understand your mind. If it seems like a mess right now, well, all the more reason to want to look into it. The Buddha gives you the tools for passing things out, so here's your chance to put them to use. Such a large part of the problem has to do with those 2 types of fabrication: verbal fabrication and mental fabrication. And of course, if you can learn to breathe in a way that feels refreshing to the body, that takes a lot of the edge off right there. Because when situations come that we find hard to endure, a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're already weighing ourselves down. Then whatever else is added on just becomes too much. But if we don't weigh ourselves down, these other things can't weigh us down. So when you find yourself facing a situation that's hard to endure, remember those steps in the breath meditation. Be sensitive to the potentials for pleasure, even in the midst of the hardship. And regardless of whether the situation that's hard to endure is physical pain, harsh words, the sense of confinement and frustration caused by the pandemic, or a sense of uncertainty and anxiety, learn how to talk to yourself in new ways. Depersonalize the situation and see what opportunities you have for training the mind to be large like the earth, to have goodwill for yourself that's as impervious to change as the earth, as cool as the river Ganges, as surfaceless as space. You'll find that that quality of endurance, as the Buddha said, is the best thing for burning away your defilements. When the defilements are burned away, then the mind can shine like the sun.